Close your eyes and imagine it's 40,000 years ago. There's no fire, no moon, just black. You can't see your own hands, you can't see the ground, and somewhere out there in that darkness, something can see you perfectly. This was the reality for nearly every human who ever lived, and it left a scar on our species so deep that a huge percentage of people today still feel a jolt of fear when the lights go out. We call it irrational. Our ancestors would have called it common sense. Because in their world, the dark wasn't empty, it was full. Full of eyes you couldn't see, full of teeth you couldn't hear coming, full of 100 different ways to die that all shared one thing in common. They came at night, and here's what makes this so fascinating. That fear you feel, that little prickle on the back of your neck when you walk into a pitch-black room and your hand fumbles for the switch, that isn't a weakness, it isn't childish. It's one of the oldest, most refined survival tools your species ever built, and it's still running inside you right now, thousands of years after you stopped needing it. So let's talk about why. Let's talk about what was actually out there in the dark, what it did to the human mind, and why you still can't fully shake it. Start with the most obvious reason, the one that sounds almost too simple to be true. Our eyes are terrible. Compared to almost every predator that ever hunted us, human vision in the dark is a joke. We are what biologists call a diurnal species, animals built for the day. Our eyes are packed with cone cells, the ones that detect color and fine detail in bright light. They are spectacular in sunshine. They are nearly useless in the dark. The animals that hunted our ancestors had the opposite setup. Leopards, lions, hyenas, wolves. Their eyes are loaded with rod cells and backed by a reflective layer called the tapetum lucidum, the thing that makes an animal's eyes glow when a light hits them at night. That layer bounces light back through the retina a second time, essentially doubling the amount of information the eye can pull from almost total darkness. A leopard can see on a moonless night roughly 6 times better than you can. Which means that for most of human history, when the sun went down, the playing field didn't just tilt against us, it flipped completely. During the day, a human with a spear and a few friends was a formidable thing. At night, that same human was blind, slow, and surrounded by things that were none of those. Think about what that actually meant. The moment the last light drained out of the sky, you lost your single greatest advantage. You couldn't see the leopard crouched 15 feet away. You couldn't see the edge of the cliff. You couldn't see the snake on the path or the rival tribe moving through the grass. Everything that could kill you gained the upper hand at exactly the same moment, every single evening, without fail. And it happened over and over, night after night, for hundreds of thousands of years. A pattern that consistent doesn't just shape behavior, it shapes biology. So evolution did what evolution does. It selected for fear. Here's the brutal logic of it. Imagine 2 early humans sitting at the edge of a camp as darkness falls. One of them feels nothing, calm, relaxed, happy to wander off into the black to explore. The other feels a rising dread, an urge to stay close to the group, to keep near the fire, to freeze and listen at every unfamiliar sound. Now run that scenario 10,000 times across 10,000 generations. The calm one wanders off and, often enough, doesn't come back. The anxious one survives, has children, and passes on that anxiety. Fear of the dark wasn't a malfunction. It was the trait that kept you alive long enough to reproduce. The humans who feared the night are quite literally the ones who became our ancestors. The ones who didn't were removed from the gene pool, usually before dawn. This is why the fear is so universal. It doesn't matter what culture you're from, what language you speak, or what century you were born in. Nyctophobia, the fear of darkness, shows up in every human society ever studied. It appears in children with no prompting at all, often around the age of 2, right as they become mobile enough to wander into danger. Nobody teaches a toddler to be scared of a dark room. The fear installs itself, on schedule, like a piece of software that was written into the species long before that child was born. And here's the part that should give you chills. Studies have found that human beings are primed to develop certain fears far more easily than others. We learn to fear the dark, snakes, spiders, and heights almost instantly, often after a single bad experience or none at all. But we struggle to develop the same instinctive terror of cars, guns, or electrical outlets, things that are far more likely to kill us today. Why? Because cars and outlets are new. Darkness, snakes, and heights have been killing humans for millions of years. Your brain isn't calibrated for the world you live in, it's calibrated for the world your ancestors died in. But raw predators are only the beginning of the story. Because the dark didn't just hide things that wanted to eat you, it did something stranger to the human mind. It filled the emptiness with things that were never there at all. Let's talk about what your brain does when it can't see. When you're deprived of visual information, your brain does not simply shut down and wait patiently for morning. It hates uncertainty, it craves data, and when it can't get real data from your eyes, it starts generating its own. This is why people in total darkness begin to see shapes drifting, faces forming, shadows moving that aren't moving at all. Your visual system, starved of input, turns up its own sensitivity until it starts detecting patterns in pure noise. Psychologists call this tendency pareidolia, the same reason you see a face in a cloud or a man in the moon. In the dark, that pattern-hunting machinery goes into overdrive. Every coat on a chair becomes a crouching figure. Every creak of the house becomes a footstep. Every rustle becomes something approaching. And your ancestors' brains did exactly the same thing, except for them, the stakes were real. This is where a concept called the smoke detector principle comes in, and it explains almost everything about the fearful human mind. Think about a smoke detector in your home. It is deliberately designed to be oversensitive. It goes off when you burn toast, when the shower gets too steamy, when nothing at all is really wrong. It generates false alarm after false alarm. And we accept that, because the cost of a false alarm is mild annoyance, while the cost of a missed alarm is that you burn to death in your sleep. Evolution built your fear system on exactly the same principle. Imagine that rustle in the grass at night. It could be the wind, it could be a leopard. If your ancestor assumed wind and was right, he saved himself a jolt of fear. If he assumed wind and was wrong, he died. If he assumed leopard and was wrong, he simply felt scared for no reason. If he assumed leopard and was right, he survived. Run that math across 1,000,000 years and the winning strategy is obvious. Always assume leopard. Always trust the fear. The humans who jumped at every shadow wasted a lot of energy on false alarms, but they were alive to waste it. The ones who stayed calm and rational eventually met the one shadow that was real. So we inherited a brain that would rather scare us 1,000 times for nothing than fail to scare us the one time it counts. And in the dark, with no visual information to correct it, that brain runs wild. It sees the predator that isn't there, because the cost of imagining a fake one is nothing and the cost of missing a real one is everything. Now layer something else on top of this, something uniquely human: imagination. Somewhere in our evolution, humans developed the ability to picture things that aren't present, to run simulations of the future, to tell stories. It's the same cognitive gift that let us plan hunts, build tools, and eventually create civilization. But that gift has a dark side, and it shows up most powerfully at night. Around the fire, in the black hours, the same mind that could imagine tomorrow's hunt could also imagine what might be waiting in the dark. And it didn't stop at real animals. It invented new ones. Every human culture on Earth populated the night with monsters, spirits, demons, and things that go bump in the dark. This is not a coincidence. The night was the canvas, and human imagination, fueled by genuine fear and starved of real information, painted it full of horrors. The dark became the home of the supernatural, not because ghosts are real, but because the human brain, faced with an unknowable blackness full of genuine danger, could not leave the space empty. It had to fill it with something. And so, across thousands of years, our ancestors built an entire second world that only existed after sunset. There's a reason nearly every mythology treats night and darkness as the domain of death, chaos, and evil, while light and day belong to gods, order, and life. It's baked into our oldest stories because it was baked into our oldest experiences. The dark was where people vanished. The dark was where the screaming came from. The dark was where you buried the ones the night had taken. When you strip away the specific monsters of each culture, what's left underneath is the same raw truth. For nearly all of human history, surviving the night was not guaranteed, and everyone knew it. And this brings us to the thing that actually held that terror at bay. The single most important technology our ancestors ever controlled: fire. Fire was the one thing that pushed back against the dark. It gave light, so your eyes worked again. It gave warmth, so you didn't freeze. But most importantly, it gave a border, a glowing circle roughly 30 feet across, and inside that circle, you were safe. Predators, for reasons wired deep into their own evolution, will not cross into firelight. A campfire broadcasts a signal into the surrounding blackness that says something dangerous lives here, something that controls the thing all animals fear. And so, for hundreds of thousands of years, the human relationship with darkness came down to a single, life or death rule: stay near the fire. Inside the light, you were human. Outside it, you were meat. Think about how deeply that must have carved itself into us. Night after night, generation after generation, the same lesson repeated: the fire is safety, the dark is death. Never let the flames go out. This is why fire feels almost magical to us even today, why we still gather around campfires and stare into them, why a candle in a dark room feels like comfort rather than just light. We are looking at the thing that kept our species alive through 100,000 nights of terror. That circle of firelight was the first home, the first safe space, the original border between us and everything that wanted us dead, and the emotional weight of that border never left us. But then something happened that no ancestor could have imagined. We won. Slowly, over the last few thousand years, and then explosively over the last 200, humans conquered the dark. First came better fire, oil lamps and candles. Then, in the 1600s, cities like Paris began installing street lamps, and for the first time the night became something you could navigate. Then gas lighting in the 1800s. And then, in 1879, Thomas Edison commercialized the electric light bulb, and within a single generation, the darkness that had ruled human life for 300,000 years simply ended. We flooded the night with light. We pushed the predators to the edges of the map. We made it possible to read, work, and walk around at midnight as safely as at noon. For the first time in the entire history of our species, a human being could go their whole life without ever once experiencing the true, total, dangerous darkness that every single one of their ancestors knew intimately. And here's the twist: your body never got the message. Your genes don't know about light bulbs. 200 years of electricity is nothing against millions of years of evolution. The fear system built for a world of leopards and cliffs and moonless nights is still installed, still running, still fully armed inside a creature that now sleeps behind locked doors in a heated house on a lit street. That's why you still feel it. That's why a child still cries out in a dark bedroom, even though the most dangerous thing in the house is the staircase. That's why you still feel that irrational urge to hurry up the basement stairs, why the back of your neck still prickles when you turn off the last light. Your rational mind knows there's nothing there, but your rational mind is not the part in charge. Underneath it sits an ancient wired-in alarm system, hundreds of thousands of years old, that has exactly one job: keep you alive in the dark, and it does not care that the dark is safe now. It has never been updated. It never will be. There's even evidence that our attempt to defeat the dark is quietly costing us. That same artificial light that made us safe now floods our eyes late into the night, suppressing melatonin, the hormone that tells our body to sleep. Our brains, reading that light, still think it's daytime. We fragmented the deep, natural darkness our bodies evolved to rest in and traded it for insomnia, disrupted sleep, and a nervous system that never quite powers down. We spent 100,000 years terrified of the dark. And now that we've banished it, we're discovering that we may have needed it more than we knew. So the next time the power goes out, and you feel that old familiar dread rise up in your chest, don't be embarrassed by it. Don't call it childish or silly. That feeling is a message from every ancestor you've ever had, an unbroken chain of humans stretching back tens of thousands of years, every one of whom survived the night long enough to pass that fear down to you. It kept them alive in a world full of teeth and shadows. It is, in a very real sense, the reason you exist at all. The dark isn't dangerous to you anymore, but some ancient part of you will never ever believe that. And honestly, after everything it did to get you here, maybe it's earned the right to be afraid.